who announced his candidacy in March of last year in Manchester, New Hampshire. Up next, former Colorado Senator Gary Hart announces his intention to seek the presidency. The date is April 14th, 1987. The place, Denver, Colorado.
Thank you, Skip. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think most of us have maybe one, perhaps two, really exciting moments in our life, maybe even historical ones, where we really feel like we want to remember where we were and what we were doing on a significant day, and maybe share it with our friends and our children and their children. And I think you and I are here together today at just such an event. It's one where we'll want to remember that we were here when a young man named Gary Hart announced his candidacy for the presidency, and not only won the election, but with the help of God went on to become one of the great presidents of the United States. And I'd like to thank all of you for sharing this very special moment with me and those around you. And I had a thought that maybe you might just want to take a moment and turn to the people to either side of you and say hello and perhaps wish one another peace. Ladies and gentlemen, about this time 4 years ago, a young man was elected mayor of the city in Denver, and then he went on to help his friend Gary Hart by going around the country wherever he was asked to help in Gary's endeavor. And he has volunteered to do that same thing again this time, but he did ask me to point out in particular to the voters of Denver that he would like not to be freed up 100% of his time to help Gary. Please join me now in welcoming the mayor of the city of Denver, the Honorable Federico Pena.
Thank you. Did you want some sun today for this event? I am very proud and honored to be here today to support a person whom I've known for many, many years. In 1984, I had the honor of seconding the nomination of Gary Hart at the Democratic National Convention, and I am equally honored to be here today to continue the effort to elect Gary Hart as our next United States President. And the reason I did that in 1984 and why I continue to do it today is not just because Gary Hart served with distinction in the United States Senate as our United States Senator, and not just because he is my friend, and not just because I'm a fellow Coloradoan. The reason I, together with millions of Americans around this country, support Gary Hart is because we believe that this is a man who cares deeply about our country, who has a vision for the future of America, who understands as we do that this election will be a referendum on national and international policy and on all of us as Americans. I want a president who cares about the environment. I want a president who's going to get people back to work. I want a president who understands the value of education and that we have to be leaders in education. I want a president who understands the needs of people who are disadvantaged and who cares deeply about them. And that's why I want Gary Hart to be president, and that's why I know we're all here supporting him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just take a moment to talk to you about matters financial. You know, you usually associate bucket brigades with putting fires out. But today we have a volunteer group spread all amongst you with little volunteer buckets. There's one right there. We'd like to ask those of you that can to reach into your pocket, give us $1, $5, whatever you can afford to help in this effort. Those of you that are buying T-shirts, thank you. I wanted to pause for 15 minutes until they went through the crowd, but they said, no, we ought to move right along, so we will. When Gary Hart left the United States Senate, a real leader, a significant man left that United States Senate. It's amazing to me to think that a state as comparatively small as Colorado could immediately replace him with another man who is already and will go on to be even more of a giant in this nation, and in particular in the United States Senate. Please join me now in welcoming a native son of Colorado, a dear friend of yours and mine and of Gary Hart's, the junior senator from Colorado, the Honorable Tim Wirth.
Thank you, Mark. And to all of you, thank you very much for being here in this extraordinary moment, history being made here in Denver, Colorado, in the Rocky Mountain West, and for the country. A generation ago, John Kennedy became President of the United States and said at that time that the torch was being passed to a new generation. Since the passage of that torch, a number of us, practically everybody here, has grown up and become tempered in the times of the last 25 years. We exulted in Camelot. We lived with the tragedies of the assassination of our president, of Robert Kennedy, of Martin Luther King. We saw the changes in the times in the civil rights movements, the war in Vietnam, the extraordinary changes that this country has gone through. As we changed as a country, our aspirations grew, our hopes grew, and our impatience for what this country could be grew. Unhappily, those aspirations were not met in the election of 1980. And in the last 6.5 years, we have seen this country in the basic decency and generosity and goals which we all share here today slowed down. Slowed down in the area of equal opportunity, slowed down in the opportunities that we all want to provide to everybody in this country for a decent education and for a good job, slowed down with a cancerous trade deficit that is eating this country alive, slowed down in the degeneration of our environment. The challenges that we face today, which everybody who is here today recognizes, are ones which can and must be taken on with a vigorous White House, with a vigorous administration, and with a partnership for the future between our government and the best which it has to provide, the private sector, the best it has to provide, and all the citizens of this country. That future which all of us know is out there to be charted, to be taken advantage of, and to be moved for the future of 240 million Americans, demands a leader of not only great decency, but great courage and great energy. We know that we have that man who has represented us in the state of Colorado so well in the United States Senate for the last 12 years, who against all odds took on the brokers of this country, took on everybody who thought that there was no chance at all that we would have anything other than business as usual in 1984, and came very, very close to winning. More importantly than coming just close to winning, he gave us a very clear sense of where this country could go, that substance and issues can once again underlie American government, American policy, and our future. It is that commitment to substance, it is that commitment to our future, It is that ability to tame the impatience which we all feel about where we are going. It is that ability to channel our hopes, and it is that ability for action that brings us here today. We are here united. We are here united to build a base and to start this great campaign for the White House, for this great campaign for the future of this country. And I am proud that the standard bearer for us will be my friend, your friend, a great Coloradan, Gary Hart. The next President of the United States, Gary Hart.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. For our out-of-town friends, welcome to Colorado. If you don't like the weather, it'll change in a few minutes. I want to say thanks to my good friends Tim Wirth and Federico Pena and all the elected officials and leaders of our community and our state here on this platform. I want to take this opportunity, if I may, to introduce the best daughter anyone ever had, Andrea Hart. I was tempted to introduce the next First Lady of the United States, but I'll simply say the best wife any candidate ever had, Lee Hart. I may or may not do that. We want to thank each and every one of you who come out here today. You are our friends. Many of you have been our friends and supporters, contributors, and boosters for many, many years. We are strengthened and heartened by your presence here, and we thank you. I want to say a special word of thanks to a very large group of the best organizers that any candidate for any office has ever had, and say a personal word of thanks to all of them who have organized this rally, and particularly Mike Stratton. Let's give him a hand. I intend to seek the presidency of the United States in 1988. And I do so for one single reason, and that is I love my country. This country is 250 million human beings, united by a common history and heritage and set of beliefs. But America is and always has been an ideal. This land has stood for equality and justice and hope and opportunity for generations and generations of Americans and millions of people around the world. And at our best, we've come close to that ideal. But I think all of us know deep down in recent years that this country has fallen short of the ideal of America. We've seen personal greed replace a sense of social justice and equity and the national good. We've seen right-wing ideology skew this nation's basic priorities. We have seen narrow single interests increasingly finance our campaigns and control our political process. And we've seen high standards for public officials and public ethics be eroded. Most of all, this nation has lost the sense of the national interest, and we're in serious danger today of letting our future pass us by. I believe this nation can do better, and I believe that's what the issue in 1988 is all about. We must rebuild this nation in the latter years of this century using a blueprint of new directions and new ideas based upon a foundation of the national interest. We must build the best education system in the world. We must renew and revitalize our national economy and modernize our factories, invent new technologies, and train our workers. We must make a moral commitment to our children that we will leave behind to them a natural heritage cleaner and better than we have today. We must reform our conventional defenses and drastically reduce our reliance on nuclear weapons for this nation's security. The stakes in 1988 could not be higher, and the choices could not be clearer. We can have a defense policy that takes school lunches away from poor children to pay for MX missiles or B-1 bombers, or we can have a defense policy that reforms our conventional defenses, saves the taxpayers' dollars, and makes this country safer. One choice is in the national interest, and that choice could not be clearer. We can have an agriculture policy that turns over the productive farmland of this nation to a handful of giant corporations, or we can have millions of family farmers producing the food and fiber of this nation. One choice is in the national interest, and that choice could not be clearer. We can have public officials who represent the ethics of Donovan, Deaver, and Boesky, or we can demand the highest standards for our elected officials and say to those people in Washington and Wall Street, you are out of business. One choice is in the national interest, and that choice is clear. And we can continue to have our political campaigns financed by special interests and have those special interests control the flow of legislation and the quality of government. Or we can reform the campaign finance laws and restore dignity and honesty and integrity to this nation's political process. One choice is in the national interest, and that choice is clear. And finally, we can define patriotism. We can say that patriotism is only the symbols of this nation, and that the flag belongs to a handful of narrow right-wing ideologues. Or we can say that patriotism and the flag belongs to all of us who care about this nation and love this nation. One choice is in the national interest, and that choice is clear. People want to know what is the issue in 1988. I will state that issue to you very clearly. The issue in 1988 is who is best qualified to govern this country. The question is one of leadership. We can have leadership that unites us or leadership that divides us. We can have leadership that challenges us or leadership that makes us feel good. We can have leadership in the national interests or leadership in the narrow interests. We can have leadership that tells this country that it must move forward, or leadership that says we will go back and recapture our past. That is the issue in 1988, and that is why I make this race. I make this race because I love my country and I want America to do better and to move forward. I believe there is an untapped idealism in the American spirit. And there is a quality in the American character that is yet to be unlocked. At its best, that is what a national campaign is and ought to be about. And I pledge to you that is what this campaign will be about. You give me 20 days in the next 20 months, and I will give you a presidency you can be proud of. Thank you. Let us go forward from this day, committed to restore this land to all of its people, to restore a sense of genuine, true patriotism to America. And if we do, we will have done the greatest thing for this country any of us can ever do. March on.